The problem with cocaine is that the biggest drug cartel in the world is called the DEA. Yeah. It's like the biggest and the dangerous cartel in the world. They control everything. They say you're allowed, you're not. And if you're not, then we attack you and we support you. For every 10 migrants that are traveling right now in Mexico to the United States, 8 are from Honduras. Yeah. And of those 8, the half are underage kids. And more people are understanding that if we don't cut that historical relationship of the owner and the servant with the United States, it's impossible to develop this country.
This is part 2 of our interview reporting inside Honduras, 10 years after the 2009 US-backed military coup that overthrew Honduras' democratically elected left-wing president and installed a right-wing US-backed regime. We are continuing our discussion here with Gerardo Torres, who is a leader of the Libre Party, the opposition party inside Honduras.
Let's bring it up to date. In the last 10 years, you've had like a doubling of poverty. Right immediately after the coup, starting with Isis Obed Murillo. He was shot in the head protesting. He was the first death, but then you started to see activists being killed, turning up dead on the streets.
And Honduras actually had the great honor after the coup of having the highest murder rate in the world.
Yeah, for 3 years.
Yes, so murder rates are increasing. You have the sicarios, the kind of drug gangs of this week. The ex-mayor of Tegucigalpa was murdered. You saw I think a car wash owner was killed. People. It's sort of the law of the jungle. Chaos has been unleashed by not just by the coup, but by what you could describe as kind of a neoliberal regime backed by the U.S. that has come in now behind the face of Juan Orlando Hernandez. And the most, I think, devastating moment of this dark period of the last 10 years was the assassination of Berta Cáceres, who was the environmentalist activist and really someone who was a towering figure on the left in Latin America. As you said, she founded the first anti-neoliberal leftist indigenous group in Latin America, period. So now the struggle seems to have risen to its highest point. And no matter where you go in this country, we went to a bar that was like a rock and roll, sports bar, like playing rock en español. A band was on stage, and the band starts leading a chant of "Fuera Ho."
The band actually wasn't.
They followed the chant.
Yeah, the people, just random people in the bar. Everywhere you go, random people just started chanting.
You were there with us, but I thought this would be a place where maybe he'd be popular because, like in Venezuela, it's so polarized. Where you have the middle class and upper class are against Maduro and But here it seems like the whole nation, at least, there's just 80% want him out.
80%. That's something that when I try to understand what's going on in Honduras or try to explain it, I think that the only thing that comes in my mind,
samosa.
So people that can see is not even samosa, because you had like polarization of society. You had like rich people and poor people. This is like the political situation of Vietnam during the early 1970s. This is not only a class struggle problem in Honduras. This is not socialists against capitalists. It's not just that. It's part of that, and there's a lot of elements of that, but it's not just that. This is an independent struggle
against colonialism.
We're fighting against our imperium, our conquistadores. This is the same struggle we had when we fought against the Spanish Empire. The United States has in Honduras one of its most strongest control in the region, and it's not allowing us to exercise democracy or exercise our civil rights. So what happened in Honduras is that it's led by a socialist movement. It's led by an anti-capitalism movement that is Libre, and there's the resistance. We are in the head of this. But we are not only the ones that want this to stop. People even from historical right wing are against Hernandez. Juan Orlando Hernandez, or Ho, fuera Ho is get out Ho. You can see it everywhere. You can see it in the stadium. You can see it in concerts. Recently,
you hear it too. Chants of it everywhere.
The Pope Francisco was in Panama, and you had like young people from all around the world, and they were like dancing and singing. There was like this big show, and the people of Honduras went and started having like the dance, and then they put the song that we sang during the resistance movement after the fraud of 2017, and they took out like this big flag that said "Fuera Ho" in front of the Pope, in front of thousands of Catholic young people. So what happened in Vietnam is that Ho Chi Minh was a leftist leader, was a communist leader, but he was in the head of an independent struggle. So that gets to more people, not only with the base or the most popular proletariat or campesino movement. It also gets to the people that have money or are middle class, upper class, that want to not be a colony, want to have an independence. And as in Saigon, this government doesn't exist. It's only the face of the United States military and economic intervention. You don't see Hernandez with any development project. You don't see Honduras to have any idea of how developing investment, how to have economic growth, how to control. Hernandez isn't able to talk with the teacher movement or the doctor movement to fix something, because he can't. Because if Hernandez tries to fix currently the problem that he has in public education, he gets in trouble with the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, and he gets in trouble with the United States.
Right.
We know
Which
that.
wants massive cuts in education.
But he doesn't want it. He doesn't even know what he wants for the government. That's why I said it's like the Saigon government that the United States had in South Vietnam.
Right.
It's just the head of their military position in that country. We know that, and that's why it's so easily to put Hernandez in trouble. We know that he can't negotiate with no one, so we put him in a problem and we let it grow. Because he has no capacity to negotiate or to fix it. You put an education problem or an environment problem.
Right. And then you say we need to reform it because there's a crisis, because they can't
Any
fix
president
anything.
would say, okay, you have a problem, let's do something, let's fix it. He has no space to maneuver. He has no capacity to negotiate. You put a problem in front of Hernandez, you have to wait a month and it grows. Because he is not the president of nothing. He's just a representation of the United States military interest in this country.
And therefore, the whole crisis that we're seeing in this country is a reflection of America's policy towards Latin America writ large. And a point that we keep coming back to since we were in Venezuela in February is this is really what the U.S. would like Venezuela to be under Juan Guaido or whoever. Juan Guaidó, whoever they can choose.
But the difference, of course, being that Honduras doesn't have oil. Venezuela has the largest oil reserves in the world.
But we don't have oil, but we have their strongest military position in the region.
And minerals, which are being exploited already by American and Canadian mining companies, and labor, of course, to exploit. And then also just simply, you mentioned bananas, good soil, food.
Honduras is the only country in Latin America that has borders with more than 12 countries, because we even have a sea border with Colombia.
Wow.
So we, like Honduras is in the center of Central America, and Latin America and the United States is like this, and then it's like this, right? So we're here.
So it's
we
super
control,
strategic.
We control, yeah. We have control, military capacity to keep Florida safe or to attack Venezuela. And we're like in the center of all that region. It's like the economic importance that Panama had for its canal, Honduras has it for its military location. It's like a watchtower. And you know that in any war, watchtowers are the strongest to get, because if you lose that, you lose sight and you lose capacity. So the people in Honduras knows what we're fighting for. People want the United States to stop backing up a government that has relationship with drug trafficking, with corruption, with death squads, but the United States doesn't do it because if they lose control of that, they have never thought about the Honduran people in the last 10 years or 15 years.
Let's talk about drugs really quickly.
Yeah,
because
because many people enjoy cocaine. Many of our listeners and viewers may enjoy cocaine because it can be a fun thing to do. I don't encourage it.
Max has never done it.
No, and I don't encourage it. But if you do or you don't, you should know that Juan Orlando Hernandez and his brother Tony Hernandez are not even good at putting cocaine on your glass table.
Explain who Tony Hernandez is.
Tony Hernandez apparently marked the cocaine
branding.
packages with his own
name.
initials.
Yeah, TH.
TH.
Explain that really quickly.
Well, the problem with cocaine is that the biggest drug cartel in the world is called the DEA. Yeah. It's like the biggest and the dangerous cartel in the world. They control everything. They say you're allowed, you're not. And if you're not, then we attack you and we support you. The other thing is that cocaine in Latin America, especially in Central America, you should know this, has been used for the last 35, 40 years to fund the most repressive human rights governments you have ever seen.
And death squads.
It's like drug cartels have been used to put cocaine money to buy guns, to buy weapons, to keep dictatorships in place. So we really don't care about the use of drugs. The thing is that we know that those cartels empower our military forces that are assassins. They empower the death squads that kill young people that only want a change in the country, and they gives a lot of money to people like Juan Orlando Hernandez. That's the way the United States pays him. Yeah. It says, okay, we're going to allow you to put drugs in the United States, and that's the way you're going to get money for your support.
Wait a minute, you're saying that the United States government allows corrupt right-wing quasi-dictatorships to bring cocaine into American cities in exchange for liquidity.
That's not what MSNBC told me.
Yeah, well, there's even a Tom Cruise movie about that.
Yes.
It's like, I saw it and I was like, why don't they get it? Even Tom Cruise knows about it, but it seems like the United States Senate and the Congress and especially the State Department seems not to understand. John Bolton and the other one, the name of the other one was like
Mike Pompeo?
No, Pompeo, Bolton, and there's another one that's really focused in Venezuela right now.
Marco Rubio?
Elliot Abrams.
Abrams was the head of the operation of supporting dictatorships, death squads against innocent people in Latin America.
Especially Guatemala.
Guatemala and El Salvador.
Where Rios Montt was actually convicted of genocide, and Elliot Abrams actively defended and supported
it actually
his
made
regime.
him resemble Gargamel.
Carrying out those crimes,
just repression of the Smurfs.
Yeah, the Smurf are political activists in Latin America that have been follow and.
It's like a reverse Dorian Gray. The more evil you commit, the longer you live, but the more you resemble the portrait.
So if you like the Smurf, you can understand why we're struggling with somebody that's trying to eat us, and it's now being hired by the United States government to do the same thing to Venezuela. You know, in Honduras, it's really easy to explain things that is really hard in other countries. For example, it's really hard for you to explain in El Salvador what the corporate media does against Venezuela. It's really hard because people don't believe that the newspapers or the news says so many lies. But they've seen it in the last 10 years in Honduras, so many people can understand what CNN is doing in Venezuela. People also can understand what the United States hypocrisy is, because the things that they are worried about in Venezuela are 100,000 times worse in Honduras, and they support it.
Like a humanitarian crisis.
Like a humanitarian. For example, you have in Venezuela, the United States is crying because some medias were closed and some journalists were taken temporarily in prison. We have 62 journalists that have been murdered in this last 10 years, and there's not a single investigation of those assassinations. And all of those 62 journalists were in opposition of the regime that they supported and they put in Honduras. We also have people of the United States crying for the people that are living in Venezuela. We are, as I said, a 8 million people country, and we have an average of 300 people leaving the country each day. And we have, this is the most dangerous country to be a woman, to be an environmental activist, to be a lawyer, to be a journalist. This is the rates of murder in Honduras of people that are related to politics or to opposition politics. This is the dangerous country. And it was until very recently the dangerous country of all.
Yeah.
And this is a United States backup democracy that is an example of human rights defendants that is worried. The Honduran government is worried for the human rights abuses in Venezuela. That's like
that they go to the OAS and denounce Venezuela.
Yeah, they're really worried. And it's like they're not worried for the children that are in cage in the United States, but they're worried that Maduro speaks really hard when Jorge Ramos goes and interview him in Caracas.
Agarra tu vaso ahorita, compadre. Take your trash, Jorge.
Take your trash, Jorge.
Tú te llevas tu basurita, compadre.
Agarra
tu basurita, Jorge Ramos. Agarra tu basurita, compadre.
Where is Jorge Ramos? I mean, you think he would be coming here to interrogate?
Yeah, it would really be interesting to see him here as a Latino supporter to talk with the regime that is expelling so many young people. This is for every 10 migrants that are traveling right now in Mexico to the United States, 8 are from Honduras. Yeah. And of those 8, the half are underage kids, children, boys and girls. And they're not so interested in that as they are in the Chavista dictatorship of Maduro.
Well, it's easy for them now because they can say Donald Trump is a bad guy who wants to eat them and wear their ears around his neck or whatever. But it was Hillary Clinton who said she wanted to send the children back. It was Barack Obama who sent officials from his administration to, I think, El Salvador or Guatemala to go on national TV and say, do not come. They were putting people in cages as well. And what no one will talk about in the Democratic debates, not even Bernie won't even say this, that there is a political context to the migration crisis of Honduras. Yeah. It has to do with the coup. To be a little
fair, Bernie did say in the debate, he said that Honduras has become a failed state, but he didn't mention why Honduras has become a failed state.
I think he would.
The U.S. wants it
I think he would if it's just that this understanding really isn't even there within the progressive mindset in the United States.
Because he's been here for over a week now.
The first diplomatic representation of Hillary Clinton when she was sworn as the Secretary of State with Barack Obama's new government was she assisted to San Pedro Sula as the State Department Secretary for the meeting of the OAS. San Pedro Sula is the second city of Honduras. Hillary Clinton, in her book that's called Hard Choices, had a chapter where she talked about the coup in Honduras and her involvement in the coup. And then she took that part away. So if you have like the first edition of that book, you can see it, and then then it disappeared. Yeah. And you can see that
was the hardest choice.
But that's part of the Democrat Party way of seeing things in Central America. It's like at the first time they understood their participation in the crisis that they created with the coup in Honduras and with other things they did. But now that Trump is in power, they have forgotten their role in this crisis. The first government that separated families, it wasn't the Trump administration. It was Barack Obama. It was in 2014 the first time that we saw Honduran kids in cages, wrapped around aluminum foil or whatever they do. And it's like, it was Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton. Of course, Trump is whatever you want.
But those were privatized detention centers, which is something else the Obama administration spearheaded, was not just putting them in these draconian centers that DHS was doing, CBP were doing. These were things created in the War on Terror, created under Bush, the second Bush. But then Barack Obama took it a step further and began privatizing all these detention centers. So you have companies who are profiting from putting these kids in cages.
So you know that one of the most dangerous things Zelaya has said in the last years was that when he saw those kids in 2014 for the first time put in those cages, he said, okay, we don't have a president here in Honduras. If we had a president, or if I was the president, I would tell the United States, the way you treat our kids in the United States is the way we're going to treat your military forces in your military bases. And that's putting the relationship side by side. And that's the main reason the United States doesn't want anything to do with Zelaya near power or the Libre Party or any one of us, is that we don't want to be a good colony of the United States.
Muñeca.
We don't want to be it. Huh?
Marionetas.
Sí, we don't want to be the good servant. We don't want them here. And the day we get to power, they're gonna have to go out. And that's why this is not only a class struggle problem. This is an independent struggle.
National liberation.
It's a national liberation movement. And it goes beyond our political or economic position as socialists, because there's a lot of people that are not socialists that are agreeing with us. And the United States knows that. And they don't know what to do. Because if they had another kind of opposition, like a most sensitive or well-behaving opposition, they surely have already taken Hernandez out of power and put a most dedicated, that could have another position. Right. The thing is that if they know if Hernandez goes down, then an anti-imperialistic movement is going to take power.
They have no one to replace him
They
with.
don't have no one
Even
to
though
replace.
he's under DEA investigation, they don't know what to do with him, and so they're reinforcing him. And I want to talk about the methods of keeping him in place, because you talked about the militarization of society. There's no war here. Speaking of caged children.
Gerardo's child over
Gerardo's son,
Yeah,
Sebastian. is
we're
here.
not finished.
¿Qué tal?
Come say hi on
Venga,
camera.
diga hola aquí.
Sí, sí. Ven
Venga,
acá.
venga, diga hola
This
aquí.
is Sebastian.
Sí.
Diga hola, hi,
No,
diga.
la cámara está acá.
Ok, ya, vaya para allá con vaya.
So
Yeah.
this government is spending record amounts on the military. Every time I see Orlando Hernandez on Channel 11 or one of the pro-government stations, the corporate stations, he's with the military. He's with some guys with like mirror glasses, and it looks like it's like a Woody Allen parody of like a junta. And they're doing drills, and they're holding Israeli Tavor rifles because of the close relationship he's built with Israel, which is part of the U.S. relationship. There's no war here, though. The war is against the people. And so the military is one of the means of also keeping voter turnout low, for example, intimidating the people. So I guess talk about the military's role here in the overall repression. There's a new wing of the military that was created after the coup, which is kind of the military police. That's Ho's private Praetorian Guard. They invaded the autonomous university last week and actually shot at students. So what's going on?
Well, our military forces work as a occupation army. It's like they conquered us and they're trying to keep control. They're under the United States coordination, and they also have Israel's support. We have United States Marines here in Honduras. More than 300 of them just came during the worst part of the crisis that Hernandez had. And we also have the announcement of more than 1,000 Israeli troops soldiers.
1,000 Israeli soldiers.
1,000.
And what are they doing?
Well, supposedly they're here to help us prepare ourselves for national disasters or for migration purposes.
And that's also what they said recently when they sent 1,000 Israeli troops to Brazil.
Yeah.
It was more like 250 with a bunch of equipment, and we don't know what it was.
Yeah, exactly. They said it was for a natural disaster.
Yeah, and the thing is that, well, it's not true. We have like, when they talk about migration, our concern is that Trump has ordered Guatemala, Mexico, and Honduras to militarize the border and stop the migrant caravans by force.
Right.
Not solving the problems that make people go out of Honduras or Guatemala or El Salvador, but stopping them at the borders. And in that case, we have seen a lot of interest in Israel to guarantee that migration control. I was recently invited.
To keep people in.
Yeah, to keep people in. It's like, I recently was in a meeting in Mexico City with people that are investigating the Israeli support of the governments of the Northern Triangle and Mexico. And you can see that their main focus is migration, jails, and military support. And these are private corporations that are working in the wall of Trump in the Mexican border, but are also working in other similar walls in Honduras, in El Salvador. So they see the profit on this. So instead of putting money to try to stop poverty or stop violence, that is like the main causes of migration, they're thinking about putting more walls and military control to stop that.
And of course, the Israeli military specializes in that, in keeping 2 million Palestinians interned in a large concentration camp called Gaza, preventing Palestinians.
Well, the West Bank is also similar.
Yeah.
It's the panopticon.
Yeah. And so it makes sense that they would bring in Israeli soldiers who have, spent decades specializing in this, in preventing the indigenous population from leaving.
We had Israeli soldiers in Honduras 2009, 10, 11. When it was like the biggest uprising of the resistance against the coup. And people had confrontations with militaries from Israel, United States, and Colombia in the region of the Awan Valley. These three military forces are part of that logic the United States government has to guarantee its military control. So what is the role of the Honduran military in all this? The military forces of Honduras are the soldiers of this international control military force that is led by the United States, but has actors as Israel, as Colombia, and in other parts of the world, like other countries. And the other thing is that the military forces sees the Honduran people as their enemy. It's like it's an occupation army. It's like they came here from another place and they see us as the resistance of that international force.
Where do they get that mindset? Because they come from the poor.
You know that I have an investigation of my own that has a relationship between the participation of the Reagan anti-Cold War strategy, anti-communist strategy of the Cold War, and the participation of evangelical, ultra-conservative, right-wing ideological movements. So the thing is that when they came here, when they understood that people were organizing by thousands and hundreds of thousands for the liberation of Latin America in the mid-1960s. So they started creating this plan. And this plan got really strong after the coup against Salvador Allende, and they started preparing what they called La Escuela de las Américas, the School of the Americas, that were training military leaders to counter-arrest communism. They had a problem there. The majority of communist leaders in Latin America were Catholic, they were Christian, they had religious belief. They had things in Nicaragua like the Misa Campesina is the mass of the poor, of the campesino.
And this comes from a movement they called liberation theology, where you have progressive, even socialist, revolutionary Catholics who see within the religious tradition of Jesus a kind of revolutionary tradition against the rich and exploiting the poor.
You started seeing in the 1970s Christian groups, Catholic groups, that said like Jesus was the first revolutionary. Right. And it was like that movement. No? It was like you went to church and then you were in a social movement. Then you had things like Rutilio Grande in El Salvador, who was a Catholic priest that was a guerrilla supporter, but you also have Camilo Torres in Colombia, who was a part of the guerrilla. You have Guadalupe Carnegie here in Honduras. He was the head of our most important guerrilla movement in the north of Honduras. So you had priests, you had nuns, you had catequistas, you have religious leaders that were asking for a change. So the Reagan's ideological support of the most Christian evangelical, like this TV Christian leaders of that Bible Belt, that he got so much strength. It was like the part that was missing, that ideological part. So you see that from the 1980s, there's like a big growth of evangelical churches in Latin America, especially focused on the most poor. So
many of these are funded by evangelical groups in the U.S.
Bridge that to Honduras, because we interviewed a progressive pastor here, David El Cid, and he, gave us a really detailed explanation of how the Orlando Hernandez government functions in tandem with the Christian right. You have a group called the Association for a More Just Honduras. Yeah. It's basically a Calvinist group in Michigan, which has a wing here, and this has been funded by the U.S. government. The State Department has given it over $6 million, and they function as the civil society platform of this government. And you have a figure, Alberto Solorzano, who is a Christian Zionist evangelical pastor who goes out and basically blesses the military when they shoot students. He'll bless Trump when he moves the U.S. embassy to Jerusalem. He'll do whatever it takes to bless everything this government does with God's holy voice. So it's pretty clear how it's playing out here. And you're saying that in the military, they are ideologically...
Yeah, so you had like evangelical church was understood in the 1980s in Honduras and most countries of Latin America as the defenders of our civilization against communism. And communism can also be disguised as Catholicism in its most left-wing position. Right. So when they got to do that, when they got that evangelical pro-Israel way of thinking and the military together, then they enter inside the head of the most poor rural area people. So for a Honduran soldier that is from La Paz and Tibucat, that are like the most poor regions here, he is formed by a United States missionary that brings him food, brings him clothes.
And they're everywhere. We entered this rural town that we'll do a video for the Gray Zone called Retoca. And when we were on the way there, we were in the middle of nowhere. We stopped to get food, and there were like 30 white, like gringo missionaries who were all wearing the same clothes. It was really weird.
So you have...
In rural Honduras. None of them spoke Spanish.
You have like these people that have seen like this United States churches that are like their big support, and they enter the military. So when they see a communist, or when they see somebody that they are told is a communist, because that's a two
which is satanic and atheistic and against Christ.
Yeah, and that's the enemy. Yeah. So he stops being a Honduran. He stops being a human being, and they can attack him. And we're talking about more than 35 years, almost 40 years of ideological doctrine of our military forces, of our politicians. It's like a conservative right-wing politician in Honduras is happy if the United States is happy, and it's sad if they take him visa away. There's nothing worse you can do to a Honduran conservative politician than take his visa away, because then he loses that key to be part of that special place that is not this. And our highest business doesn't even live in Honduras. They live in Miami, they live in Florida, and they only have like their small companies here where they can get more money. So you can see there's a lot of resemblance to what an empire looks like. If you have money, you can be part of the empire. And if you are happy with the empire, then you can get some money sometime. The thing is that what the United States decisions in Honduras has made is that thousands of people are trying to escape from Honduras. This is not the American dream of the 1980s or the 1970s or the 1990s. This is not, I want to go to New York to make money and maybe someday I'll stop being poor. This is an escape. This is an exile. And that's why it's really awful to see the way people are being treated for those people that they thought were their biggest allies and their friends, and they were like their big amigos that came here, that when they get to the United States, they put them in cages and they treat them as animals.
We distilled all of the worst things about our country and exported it here and transformed it into a dystopian hellbox with a Christian right soundtrack.
Yeah, it is. That is the best way to put this picture for the people in the United States. This is your worst nightmare. This is what you think would happen if the ultra-conservative people took control of the United States. Well, this is today in Honduras. And that's why our people are trying to escape, because it's not good. It maybe sound good. Like we have a control of the military and we have the control of the people, and we don't allow any leftist, ultra-liberated people to... No, we have complete control. When you have complete control, what you do is you take oxygen away, and it's impossible to breathe. And this country has almost stopped breathing if it wasn't for the people that are continue fighting against the impossible. Because that is like, I think this is the biggest thing we have in the Honduran resistance, is that we're fighting against the impossible. It's like, so you're going to defeat the United States? Yeah, that's the point of this. We're not going to defeat them there, but we're going to defeat them here, and we're going to take them out of here. And if they want to come back, they have to come back as equal relationships, not as the owner of something that is really our own. So that's the main reason of this struggle, and that's why after 10 years we keep on fighting.
And where's the hope? It's a corny question, but you have to have something to keep you fighting against the impossible. And it's clear that the struggle is expanding here and growing. So where does the hope come from?
There is the hope. We haven't stopped growing in these 10 years. We were thousands in 2009. We're more than 1 million in 2019. So we haven't stopped growing. So the things that we thought, the things that we knew, because we knew we were a colony of the United States before the coup. I mean, we, the people that were part of the left movements, and we were like really small. And now we are a political party that has the capacity to win elections and to control the country. I come from that micro leftist movements, where if we had 30 people together, we were really happy. And if we had like this assembly of 15 people, we were like, we did it, man. And we had 100 people in the streets, it was the revolution. And now I am part of the coordination of a political party that moves more than 1 million people in Honduras and has assemblies all around the country. So there's the hope. Yeah. We have seen our truth being expanded, other people opening their eyes. The coup was horrible, but it was necessary to people to understand what the reality of Honduras is. And more people are understanding that if we don't cut that historical relationship of the owner and the servant with the United States, it's impossible to develop this country. And once we do that, then we can have other contradictions. If we want to be socialists or social democrats or whatever. Right. In this moment in Honduras, it's an independent struggle.
It's just a fundamental.
Yeah, it's a fundamental independent struggle, and we're not going to stop it until we have it. And now you have people from the commerce, empresarios, businessmen, industrial leaders, the big business of Honduras, the big right-wing business in Honduras, agreeing with us, sitting with us, and telling us, maybe you were right. Maybe we were independent after all. And that's like our biggest gain in these years of struggle.
Well, we want to take this message to the heart of the beast. That's the point of our podcast and the work that we do. I only have one more question for you, which is, will you remember us and the Moderate Rebels podcast when you're foreign minister?
I was in charge of being the representation of the resistance for the United States from 2009 to 2014. Then I had another position. And I really like to talk with the people in the United States because there's a lot of people with a lot of hope and they feel really small. Yeah. Well, because it's really big, the thing you're fighting. And I told you, I don't think that there's no way to tell you that your struggle it's small and it's impossible. We come from the impossible in Honduras. And when we got together and talked with all different groups of people, then we found that some problems cross the lives of all of us. Not only my problem over your problem. Is that if we find problems that we all can understand, then we can grow. And I think that there has to be hope, and there has to be a lot of work. And I think that left progressive anti-imperial movement in the United States is starting to see one of its best times, because the contradictions inside the United States are going to allow you to grow. And if you have the capacity to find unity and to get together with all people, even the people you don't like so much, then you can make the best of it. And this moment of crisis, you can grow, and you have to try to do it. And of course, you're welcome to Honduras anytime you come.
I'll take that as a yes, because you didn't answer.
And I really relate to a lot of what you're saying about Honduras. I really, can relate to it, and I know a lot of North Americans would. So, thank you for sharing that with us. Ben, do you want to kind of take us out?
Well, I also think a lot of people, even some right-wing Trump supporters, can actually get behind the message, which is just the reality, that there are so many people trying to immigrate to the U.S. because they are refugees, fleeing violence, fleeing oppression that the U.S. government is responsible for. And then, the Trump voters might put it in the terms of, well, the Obama administration did this. But it needs to be acknowledged that this reality that the U.S. government has created is responsible for the crisis not only here, but the crisis that, as Max has discussed in his book, that has fueled far-right movements, racist movements, anti-immigrant movements. So we are really inextricably linked. I mean, unfortunately, it's not, like you said, a fair relationship. It is one between colonial master and colonial subject. But, these are the Americas, and we're part of the same social, political sphere. So yeah, it's great to hear that you do feel that solidarity and that common struggle together.
Yeah, I think it's the same struggle. And I think that there's no empire in the history of humankind that has been defeated by a foreign force. All empires have been broken down from the inside. We are trying to find independence from that empire and to create our lives of our own. But the destruction of that empire that could control other people, even if we win in Honduras, it wouldn't be enough if we see other people that are being under that control, and the struggle would have to continue. But only if we put a stop to that imperialistic way of seeing the United States relationship with other countries. Even only if we stop that, then we can assure that other peoples are not going to be oppressed by that logic of military, business, and corporate interests. So it's not only necessary to take them out of Honduras, it is necessary to change the way the United States understands its relationships with other countries. And they're not going to do it por las buenas, they have to do it por las malas.
Well, that I think we can't end it any better than that. That's the perfect way to end. You were watching and listening to Moderate Rebels. I'm Ben Norton here with Max Blumenthal and Gerardo Torres, and we are in Tegucigalpa, the capital of Honduras. If you go to The Gray Zone, thegrayzone.com, that's with an A, the American spelling, you can see some of our reports here with our colleague Anya Parampol, who's doing great video reports as well. And we will also be doing some reports upcoming in Nicaragua, and hopefully we'll see you there. So we have a lot of exciting stuff coming, although I will say this is definitely one of the best episodes we've ever done. Incredible.
Patreon.com/Moderate Rebels if you like what you saw or heard.
Yeah,
Hit us up.
It's going to be hard to top that. Thanks so much.
Gracias.